Eileen Carpenter. I graduated from Vanderbilt in 1969. I graduated with a degree in physics.
What was the classroom experience like for you, especially being in the hard, male-dominated science such as physics?
I tell you, the most unusual experience I had was my first class at Vanderbilt was 8 o'clock in the morning. It was an English class, and it was at the old art building. It was really interesting because there was one other black woman. We were both freshmen, Bobby Jean Perdue, and the two of us sat, I think, in the first row, and then there was one white guy who sat in the first row, I think a few seats down from us, and then the rest of the class sat about 3 rows behind us. It was really weird, and this is going to sound crazy, but initially I didn't think that they were trying to get away from us. I just thought it just happened like that, and then after a while I was like, I remember turning around one day and just looking at the rest of the people in the back of the class going, I wonder, is it us, And that went on the whole semester, and I've always wanted to ask somebody, I can't really remember who was in the class, how come you guys, all sat, and I mean literally there was like 3 or 4 rows between us, everybody else sat in the back,
You mentioned that you were not as race conscious, I guess, at that point in time when going through the application process. Did Vanderbilt, and I think I know what the answer is going, but I'll ask this question anyway. Did Vanderbilt make you more or less race conscious, say going out than coming in?
Oh my God, totally more race conscious. I mean, I had an extremely naive understanding of race growing up in Nashville, even though it was very segregated. We were just, I don't know, just shielded from, I guess, the reality of race. And so I thought that racism was like the Ku Klux Klan in Mississippi, that, killed people. That's what I thought it was. And I thought that, once the Civil Rights Bill was signed, all of that was over. I mean, it sounds really crazy, naive now, but, and maybe it wasn't quite that wasn't totally my understanding, but, pretty much that was kind of my sense. I mean, I thought that since Vanderbilt had opened, it was open, and that I would go to Vanderbilt and have pretty much the same kind of experience that I would have at Tennessee State. Like I was looking forward to joining a sorority and, doing all the things that I would normally have done at Tennessee State. And I think my experience at Vanderbilt was more difficult because my expectations were so out of line with reality, And I've had this conversation with my roommate, Carolyn Morgan. And, for instance, her reality was much closer to the actual reality. And I think her experience wasn't quite as difficult, in that respect. And she didn't get as angry, I think, as I did. But I think it was the difference between what I expected and the reality. The racism that you experienced at Vanderbilt was not the Klan. It was, I never had anybody call me the N-word or spit on. I never had anyone do anything unkind or out of the way toward me at Vanderbilt. And that made it more difficult because for a long time I understood that I was really unhappy and something was very wrong. But I didn't know what it was, and my parents couldn't help because, they were like, well, did anybody hit you? Was anybody? I'm like, no. So how come you come home every evening and just throw your books in the corner and get in bed, And I couldn't explain that. And, excuse me, it was a long time after that, you know, reflecting back on the experience, that I realized that, you know, what I was going through and what other black students were going through was just not being a part of the community, being totally ignored. You know, I read, was it Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man, and I knew exactly, you know, what he meant. You know, it's just being isolated and just not being part of everything. And of course back then that was, you know, people would say, you know, you're lucky to be in the school there, you know, you're wanting too much. But I think that my generation, you know, after our parents had struggled through the real fight, you know, the physical and the name calling and the killing and the lynchings, I think it set my generation up for expecting movement to another level. You know, we actually expected community, you know, and you know, fitting in and being a part and being allowed to kind of, you know, do our thing, you know, to fulfill your expectations and your dreams, you know. And so, but it took me a long time to understand that was what I was feeling, and part of my anger came about because it was just frustration, you know, knowing I was unhappy but not being able to really pinpoint the source of the unhappiness. You know?